I've created a new pizza dough calculator for DSX2. So this is what I'm calling version 2 of the pizza dough calculator. To open the pizza dough calculator from the screensaver screen, we tap on the icon. The version number is indicated down the bottom here. So at the time of recording, we're up to version 2.00. This calculator is quite a bit different. We can now set base recipes, and you can set up to 4 different base recipes. The original calculator had a fixed recipe. We can also set 2 additional ingredients for the recipe. We can set recipes that call for extra virgin olive oil and recipes that call for sugar. This version will also adjust the recipe according to the yeast type you have. For instance, you can set up the recipe with instant yeast, and you might want to use fresh yeast, and that will automatically adjust to calculate for the different type of yeast. To set up a base recipe, we tap here. It comes pre-populated with 2 recipes, the Uni Classic and Uni Quick recipes. You can change those, edit them, and make them your own if you like. You can also add 2 new recipes here, so you can have 4 in total. There's a factory reset button down here. Just be aware that any changes you make will be reset as you see them now. So for instance, if you were to make changes to this recipe, or let's create our own. So I'm just going to give this one a title. You don't have to have a title, but I'll demonstrate what the title does here. When I tap on one of these ingredients here, it'll open this number picker. Number picker will indicate which recipe you're working on at the top here and which parameter you're working on here. At the moment I'm working on flour, and I can give flour a value, and you can see it's populated that value. If I tap on water, again that's my recipe, water, and put in the value. If I was to tap on a different value over here, it's telling me I'm editing Uni Quick, and it's water parameter. I'm going to reset that back to the factory settings, and you can see it's wiped out my recipe there. On the right side we have favorites, and the difference between a favorite and a base recipe is a favorite uses a base recipe but also saves any settings you change here, so the quantity and any of these settings. I'll go through and set up a favorite in a minute. I just want to explain a couple settings here. At the moment our ingredients list is set to 0 because we don't have a base recipe selected. So if I select the base recipe, it highlights which base recipe I've got selected. I'm going to set up a favorite. So the favorite I'm going to set up is going to be a quick recipe. So this is actually the recipe I use. I want to have a pizza and I haven't got any dough pre-made. Within an hour I can make a pizza, and this is the recipe I use for that. In those cases I'm nearly always making just 1 pizza dough, and I make 1 large pizza for Christy Lee and I, and that pizza's a 400 gram ball. So I'll set those parameters up. I always use a 67% hydration for this particular recipe, and I use instant dry yeast. Okay, so I've now made those changes. I'm using the base recipe, the Uni Quick recipe. I use honey. Okay, so I've got a recipe based on the Uni Quick recipe. The changes I've made are highlighted, so I'm adding honey to this recipe, and I've also changed the hydration, which is highlighted here, so I can quickly see what changes I've made to the base recipe. Now to save that to favorites, we tap on here to load the favorite setup screen. You can change button labels at any time. You don't need to save those, they'll automatically save, but to save the current settings to a favorites button, we need to tap the respective button here. So I'm going to save that to this button. When I tap on this button, you can see it's going to repopulate all those settings. I want to give that button a label, so I'm going to call it quick 1 large. Okay, I'm going to set up 2 favorites, so let's say long ferment, so I can label that button now. Unless I tap here, it's not going to save anything to that button, so all I've done there is just set a label for it. So to set up my long ferment button, I'm going to use the Uni Classic as my base recipe. Again, I use a higher hydration. For this recipe, I always make multiple balls, so therefore I'm going to have a waste factor. With this recipe, I often make either 4 or 6 balls, and I make them at 280 grams. So that's all set up. I don't use any oil and I don't use any sugar in this recipe. I just use the classic recipe. So I'll now save that to that favourite button. I'll tap on that button and that's saved. So you now can see that I have 2 different favourite setups. If I find I'm only making 4 balls, commonly I just change that, go in here, tap, and I've updated that favourite and now just loads 4. Another difference with this, we can now tap on the ingredients list here, anywhere in this window, to enlarge that, which makes it easy to read from a distance. If we're using a base recipe that doesn't call for sugar or for oil, we can tap these buttons here and that will load a default value. The default value is 20 grams so per recipe. So if that volume doesn't suit for you, you would go into the recipe here and add whatever value you want. So just be aware that it just uses 20 gram per the default recipe. So if your recipe was adjusted down to a smaller dose, it will adjust that ingredient accordingly to the same ratio. And again, you can see this is highlighted, saying that the base recipe doesn't call for extra virgin olive oil. So it's highlighting that. I can turn that off there. It's turned on any time. And the same for sugar. If I wanted to add sugar there, so I want to use this base recipe, but I want to have that yeast activate quicker, I can just use sugar for that one off. Another function of this version is we can enlarge the ingredients list. So tapping anywhere in the ingredients list will open a full-page list with large font, and that makes it easy to read from a distance. To close out, we can tap anywhere in the window. So that's it. That covers everything for this version.